There's a quiet kind of suffering that almost no one talks about, a type of pain that doesn't scream, but slowly drains you from the inside. It's the pain of constantly breaking yourself just to keep other people happy. Maybe you know this feeling too well. You wake up already tired, not because you didn't sleep enough, but because you've spent years carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. You give your time, your energy, your peace, your emotional space, and you do it so automatically that you barely notice the cracks forming inside you. You say yes, even when your whole body wants to say no. You reassure others even when you are drowning. You keep the peace even when it costs you your own. And because you've done it for so long, you've convinced yourself that this is just who you are. Helpful, strong, understanding, the reliable one. But beneath those labels is a truth you almost never admit. You're exhausted from trying to be everything for everyone. You don't break because others demand too much. You break because you refuse to stop giving, even when there's nothing left to give. And here's the part people rarely understand. This isn't about weakness, it's about conditioning. At some point in your life, you learn that love must be earned. That approval is safer than honesty. That pleasing people keeps you from being abandoned, rejected, or misunderstood. So you built a version of yourself that could never disappoint anyone. A version that always smiles, always helps, always forgives, always stays soft even when the world is rough. But this chapter, the first chapter, begins with a realization you've avoided for years. You are losing pieces of yourself while trying to keep others whole. And it's not your fault. No one taught you how to protect your energy. No one showed you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty. No one told you that your needs matter just as much as everyone else's. So instead of resting, you keep pushing. Instead of choosing yourself, you sacrifice. Instead of speaking up, you swallow your truth. And slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing, you begin to break. Not dramatically, not loudly, just little fractures beneath the surface. The kind that form when you've been carrying too much weight for too long. You feel it when you apologize, even though you did nothing wrong. When you shrink yourself to avoid conflict. When you pretend you're fine because being honest feels like a burden. Deep down, you know something isn't right. You know you can't keep living like this. This first chapter is your invitation to finally look at the pain you have been hiding, to acknowledge the invisible burden you carry every day, to recognize the pattern you have been repeating for years. Because before you can heal, before you can reclaim yourself, before you can stop breaking for others, you need to understand why you started breaking in the first place. And that's what we will explore next. There's a moment in life when you begin to ask yourself a quiet, uncomfortable question. Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep choosing other people's comfort over my own? Why do I bend until I break and then pretend it doesn't hurt? Most people think the answer is simple. They think it's kindness, compassion, a generous heart, a selfless personality. But the truth, the real truth, is much more complicated. Because what looks like kindness on the outside often comes from fear on the inside. And that fear has been with you for a long time. Let's slow down here. Think about this. When was the first time you learned that disappointing someone was dangerous? When was the first time you realized that your value depended on how useful, how agreeable, or how pleasing you were? For many people, this lesson began early. You learned to read the room, you learned to adapt, you learned to shrink, you learned to silence your needs before anyone even noticed them. Not because you wanted to, but because you felt you had to. And that conditioning follows you into adulthood, still whispering in your ear, don't upset anyone. Don't let them down. Don't be a burden. Don't take up too much space. You mistake this voice for your conscience, for your morality, for your personality. But it isn't, it's survival. This chapter is about understanding why. Why you apologize when you've done nothing wrong. Why you forgive people who don't deserve forgiveness. Why you avoid conflict even when the truth is suffocating you. Why you push your own limits until you collapse emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically. It's because somewhere deep inside, there is a part of you that learned a painful equation. If I disappoint people, I lose love. If I stop giving, I become replaceable. If I say no, I become the problem. If I choose myself, I end up alone. This isn't kindness. This is fear disguised as virtue. You're not breaking yourself because you're selfless. You're breaking yourself because you're afraid of what will happen if you stop. And the world has rewarded you for it. People praise your patience. They admire your strength. They say you're so understanding, so reliable, so easy to be around. But they don't see the cost. They don't see the exhaustion that settles into your bones. They don't see the resentment building quietly in your chest. They don't see the tears you hide, the boundaries you swallow, the needs you bury. And the cruelest part? You don't see it either, because you've been conditioned to believe that your worth depends on how much you can endure. But this chapter ends with a truth you need to hear. You don't exist to keep the world comfortable. You don't exist to carry emotional weight that isn't yours. You don't exist to hold everyone together while you fall apart. You deserve a life where you don't have to break to be loved. There's a moment in life when you realize something unsettling, something you've always felt but never had the courage or the clarity to name. It's the moment you notice how easily you bend yourself for others, how quickly you silence your needs, how naturally you shrink so someone else can feel big, feel comfortable, feel unthreatened. And yet, you don't remember choosing this. In fact, it feels like it's always been this way. This chapter is about understanding why. Because people-pleasing isn't a personality trait. It's a wound, a quiet injury that began long before adulthood. And like all psychological wounds, it hides itself behind beliefs you think are just part of who you are. Let's peel back that layer. You see, the tendency to break yourself to keep others happy usually forms in childhood. Not from dramatic trauma, not always. Often it grows out of something far more subtle and far more common. Maybe you had a parent whose love felt conditional. Maybe affection came when you behaved a certain way, achieved something, or stayed quiet. Maybe conflict in your home made you feel responsible for keeping the peace. Maybe someone you depended on emotionally was unpredictable, and you learned to monitor their mood like a weather forecast. So you adapted. You learned that being yourself was risky, but being who they needed you to be kept you safe. You learned that your feelings were less important than stability, that your needs were inconvenient, that your presence should never cause trouble. And over years, this turned into a belief. I must earn my place. I must not disappoint. I must not take up space. You didn't consciously choose this. It was survival, and survival forms deep patterns. As an adult, these patterns look like saying yes when your whole body wants to say no, apologizing for things that aren't your fault, over-explaining yourself, feeling anxious when someone is upset with you, being terrified of being misunderstood, feeling guilty for resting, for not being productive, for taking care of yourself, feeling responsible for everyone's feelings except your own. You think you're being kind, but inside, you are bleeding because here's the truth you've avoided for years. People-pleasing is self-abandonment disguised as compassion. It's loyalty to others at the cost of loyalty to yourself. It's a fear response dressed up as generosity and patience. And deep down, you know it. You can feel it every time you agree to something you don't want. Every time your chest tightens around a quiet no you never voice. Every time you go home exhausted, drained, invisible, even though you spent the entire day being good, helpful, and understanding. You think this version of you is lovable, but this version of you is just tolerated. And the most painful part? You don't even know who you would be without this pattern, but that's what we will begin uncovering in the next chapter. Because before you reclaim your boundaries, before you reclaim your voice, before you reclaim your sense of self, you must understand who taught you that you weren't allowed to have one. Let's go deeper. There's a painful truth that most people don't realize about their habit of overgiving, overfixing, or overcaring. You're not just being nice, you're sacrificing yourself in ways you don't even notice. And the worst part, it feels like the right thing to do, because you were conditioned to believe that love, approval, and acceptance must be earned, that your value is measured by what you can offer and what you can endure. Let's slow down here. Take a breath and look at what's really happening beneath the surface. You're not too kind, you're afraid of losing people. Most people who break themselves to keep others happy have one deep fear: abandonment. Not always in the dramatic sense. Sometimes it's subtle: fear of people pulling away, fear of disappointing someone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen as difficult, fear of being replaced, so you adjust. You shrink, you agree, you overextend. Not because you're weak, but because your survival system learned that tension equals danger, and keeping everyone happy feels like safety. You think peace comes from avoiding conflict. But here's the paradox: every time you avoid outer conflict, you create inner conflict. You tell yourself, I'll let it go. It's not worth the fight. I don't want to upset them. I'm fine, it doesn't matter. But it does matter, because your silence becomes self-betrayal. Your compliance becomes resentment. Your kindness becomes exhaustion. You're not avoiding conflict. You're just moving it inward, and inside you it grows. Your nervous system was trained to overfunction. This is where psychology becomes important. When you grow up in environments where you had to keep the peace, you had to anticipate others' moods, you had to be easy, you had to earn love through behavior, your nervous system learns one lesson: my needs are dangerous. So as an adult, you apologize too much. You explain yourself too much. You try to be perfect. You feel guilty for resting. You feel responsible for other people's feelings. You're not doing this consciously. Your brain thinks it's protecting you. People-pleasing is not a personality trait. It's a survival strategy. The saddest part? You keep choosing people who reinforce the pattern. Without realizing it, you gravitate toward people who expect more than they give, make their problems your responsibility, take advantage of your empathy, don't respect your boundaries, praise you for sacrificing yourself, not because you want to, but because your wounds recognize them. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. And slowly you become the background character in your own life. You become the problem solver, the emotional sponge, the reliable one, the strong one. Everyone else gets the full version of you. You get what's left, and eventually you start asking yourself, why am I always tired? Why do I feel invisible? Why does no one show up for me the way I show up for them? Why do I feel empty even when surrounded by people? It's because you've built a life where your value depends on how much you give, and never on who you are. There is a moment, a quiet, almost invisible moment, when being the strong one stops feeling noble and starts feeling heavy. A moment when giving becomes draining, when patience becomes exhaustion, when being the understanding and becomes being the forgotten one. But most people never notice when that moment happens, because the people pleaser doesn't collapse loudly. They collapse silently. And maybe that's you. You hold everything together so well that nobody ever thinks to check on the person who is always fine. Nobody wonders how much energy it takes for you to keep showing up with a smile. Nobody sees the weight you carry because you've trained everyone, including yourself, to believe you don't need help. But that comes with a cost, a slow, subtle cost that grows over months or even years. Let's talk about that cost. You see, when you constantly prioritize others, your mind begins to send you quiet warnings. They're gentle at first: a little irritation, a tiny drop in motivation, a sense that you need just a bit more silence. But your inner voice whispers, don't make a fuss, keep giving, keep being good. So you push through it. Then the warnings get louder. You start feeling tired all the time. You have less patience. Your sleep gets shallow. Your emotions get heavier. You tell yourself it's stress or life or just a phase, but deep down, you know it's something else. It's the courtois. Then one day you might wake up and feel empty in a way you can't explain. Not sad, not angry, just depleted. Like there's nothing left inside you to give. That's not weakness. It's not failure. It's not you being dramatic. It's self-neglect. The quiet, accumulated results of years spent tending to everyone but yourself. And here's the most painful truth. When you break yourself to keep others comfortable, you teach them that your breaking point does not exist. You teach them that you are always available. always understanding, always the one who will bend. And once your boundaries become invisible to them, they disappear for you too. That's how people lose themselves. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small compromises they convince themselves were not a big deal. But every not a big deal carries a piece of you. Over time, you start forgetting what you actually want. You stop recognizing your needs. Your identity becomes shaped around avoiding conflict and keeping peace. And peace built on self-destruction is not peace. It is silence. And silence is where people slowly fade away. But here's the good news. The fact that you're listening to this means something inside you already knows you can't keep living like this. You're noticing you're feeling the weight, and that awareness is the first step toward healing. Because the truth is simple. You were never meant to save everyone. You were meant to save yourself so that you could live, not disappear inside your own life. There's something you need to understand. You didn't become a people pleaser by accident. You didn't wake up one day and decide to betray your own needs. You learned it. You built it. And at the time, it was the only way you knew how to survive. Let's slow down for a moment. When you were younger, maybe as a child, maybe as a teenager, there was a moment when you realized something painful. Your safety depended on making other people happy. Maybe you had a parent who only showed affection when you behaved perfectly. Maybe you lived in a home where conflict felt dangerous, unpredictable, or overwhelming. Maybe you were surrounded by people who were emotionally unavailable, and the only way you could feel valued was by being useful. So you adapted. You became the peacemaker, the caretaker, the one who never causes trouble, the one who anticipates everyone's needs before they even speak. This is important. At that time, this strategy protected you. It made you feel safe. It made you feel needed. It made you feel worthy enough to stay connected. But here's the hard truth. That mask you created to survive is now the same mask that's suffocating you. Because the world no longer requires that version of you. But somewhere inside, you still believe it does. You still believe you only deserve love when you are convenient, when you don't ask for anything, when you don't cause problems. This is why saying no feels like a betrayal. Why setting a boundary feels like you're doing something wrong. Why being honest about your feelings feels dangerous. Your brain still reacts as if losing someone's approval will destroy you, even though you're not that helpless child anymore. Let this sink in. You are not betraying anyone by choosing yourself. You're only betraying the outdated version of you, the one who believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. That version of you was doing the best it could. But it is tired now. It is exhausted. It has carried enough. And the reason your life feels heavy is because you are still carrying responsibilities that were never meant to be yours. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to be available for everyone to be accepted. You don't need to shrink yourself so others can feel comfortable. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to rest. But before you can do any of that, you have to face the mask you have been wearing your entire life. Not to destroy it, not to hate it, but to understand it and gently let it go. Because the truth is simple, even if it's painful. You learn to abandon yourself to keep others. Now it's time to learn how to keep yourself without losing others. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working too much, or sleeping too little, or juggling too many responsibilities. It's the exhaustion that comes from carrying people, from holding emotional weight that was never yours, from saving situations that were never your responsibility, from showing up for everyone while no one shows up for you. This chapter is about that kind of tiredness, a deep, invisible fatigue that sits in your chest, a heaviness you can't explain, a numbness that creeps in even when life looks from the outside. Let's talk about the exhaustion behind your smile. You see, when you spend years trying to make everyone around you comfortable, when you're constantly smoothing conflicts, reassuring fragile egos, absorbing tension, and fixing what other people break, your nervous system gets stuck in emergency mode. You learn to scan every room, every conversation, every tone shift, every facial expression. You're always asking, are they okay? Did I upset them? Should I explain myself? Do they need something from me? What did I do wrong? And all of this happens automatically before you even realize you're doing it. Because for most of your life, peace was something you had to work for. Comfort was something you had to earn. Safety was something you had to create with your own effort. So now, even as an adult, your body doesn't rest. Your mind doesn't rest. Your emotions don't rest. Not because you're weak, but because you've lived in survival mode for far too long. But here's the part most people never notice. People pleasers aren't kind because they're overflowing with love. They're kind because they're terrified of being abandoned, rejected, misunderstood, or punished. Your kindness, your helpfulness, your reliability, your gentle nature, these are beautiful qualities, but they became performances you felt forced to adopt. And performing is exhausting. Pretending you're okay is exhausting. Holding your tears back is exhausting. Being the one who can handle everything is exhausting. Carrying your own pain while carrying everyone else's is exhausting. You don't collapse physically. You collapse emotionally. You don't break in public. You break quietly, at night, alone, when everything goes silent and you finally stop pretending. But the truth is this: you're not tired of life. You're tired of living a life where you can't be yourself. You're tired of giving more than you receive. You're tired of swallowing your truth. You're tired of avoiding disappointment at the cost of your sanity. You're tired of always being okay, even when you're not. And here's the most important part. Your exhaustion is not laziness. It's not weakness. It's not lack of discipline. Your exhaustion is a message, a boundary being crossed. A voice inside you whispering, you can't keep doing this. Something needs to change. And that change begins with one simple truth. You don't have to break yourself to keep other people happy. There comes a moment in everyone's life when the exhaustion becomes louder than the people you're trying to please. When the ache in your chest finally demands to be heard. When something inside you whispers, this can't be my life forever. That moment is the turning point. And if you're listening to this, chances are you're closer to that moment than you think. Because here's the truth. You are not meant to live your entire life breaking yourself just to keep the peace. You are not meant to shrink so others can feel comfortable. You are not meant to disappear so others can shine. But change doesn't begin with anger. It doesn't begin with confrontation. It doesn't begin with cutting people off. Change begins with something far simpler and far scarier. Telling yourself the truth. The truth that you've been abandoning your needs for years. The truth that you've been silencing parts of yourself just to avoid disappointing others. The truth that you've confused sacrifice with love and self-betrayal with generosity. And the hardest truth of all, you did all of this because, deep down, you were terrified of losing people. But here is the reframe that will shape the rest of your life. You don't lose people by setting boundaries. You lose people who benefit from you having none. This is where your healing begins. It begins when you stop asking, what if they get upset? And start asking, what if I keep living like this? It begins when you stop giving people access to the version of you who never says no. The version of you who accepts the bare minimum. The version of you who always comes second. It begins when you redefine the meaning of kindness. Because kindness is not self-erasure. Kindness is not letting yourself drown so others can breathe. Kindness is not proving your worth by suffering. Real kindness is honest. Real kindness is balanced. Real kindness includes you. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you are beginning to understand that your needs do not make you selfish. Your truth does not make you difficult. Your boundaries do not make you unlovable. They make you human. They make you whole. They make you finally visible to yourself. This chapter is the turning point because it's where you choose you. Not as a rebellion, not as revenge, but as an act of coming home. Because every time you betray yourself to keep someone else happy, you teach your mind that you don't matter. And every time you choose yourself with honesty and love, you teach your mind that you do. This is the beginning of a life where you don't break yourself to keep others comfortable. A life where your softness isn't taken advantage of. A life where your giving comes from overflow, not from emptiness. If you've made it to this point, it means something inside you is tired. Tired of the weight you carry, tired of the guilt you're conditioned to feel, tired of shrinking just to make space for people who never shrink for you. And now, you're standing at a crossroads. On one side is the path you already know, being the reliable one, the forgiving one, the one who understands even when no one understands you, the one who bends, adjusts, absorbs, and sacrifices, because that's what you've always done. The other path is unfamiliar. It has fewer footprints. It looks quiet or almost too quiet. It invites you to step into a life where your needs matter, even if that feels uncomfortable at first. This chapter is about that moment, the turning point, because healing doesn't begin when you stop giving. It begins when you stop breaking yourself as the price of giving. And I want to tell you something you may never have heard in your entire life. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is responsible. It is sane. It is healthy. It is the foundation of every authentic relationship you will ever have. Let me explain. Selfishness is taking from others while giving nothing back. But what you've been doing is the opposite. You've been giving until you collapse and blaming yourself for not giving more. That is not selfishness. That is self-abandonment. And it ends today. Because here is the truth you must carry with you. You can love people deeply without carrying their emotional weight. You can support them without sacrificing your mental health. You can show empathy without being the one who always overextends. Love does not require self-destruction. Compassion does not require exhaustion. Connection does not require bleeding for people who never stop to ask why you're hurting. And this is the turning point where you finally understand. You cannot save people by breaking yourself. You cannot heal others by abandoning yourself. You cannot be the foundation of every relationship when you don't even have solid ground beneath your own feet. Your new path begins with small, brave steps. Saying no without explaining for 10 minutes. Resting without feeling guilty. Letting people solve their own problems. Letting silence be an answer. Letting others feel disappointed instead of sacrificing yourself to prevent it. And most importantly, letting yourself matter in the same way everyone else matters. Choosing yourself doesn't push the right people away. It filters out the wrong ones. People who love you will adjust. People who only loved your compliance won't. And both outcomes are gifts. So breathe, because this moment, the one you're in right now, is the beginning of a life where you no longer break to keep others whole. It is the beginning of a life where you finally stop abandoning the one person who has been there since the beginning. You. And that is the turning point.